One of the problems we have with this outrage culture now is where we seek to attack people and ruin their careers is that there's no nuance available. And I think this is a big mistake. We see this with the Me Too movement where you have things ranging from actual rape, sexual assaults to just like some unwanted touching, which would still be bad, but then just an awkward date. All of that could be considered, this is all bad, Me Too movement. And that's very bad because we end up allowing some of the more egregious crimes to be connected with like crimes that aren't really crimes at all. It's just social awkwardness. I think we're starting to see the same thing with this blackface situation. Now, let me say I am biased, and I think the majority of this is coming from the left, that they're the group that's responsible for the outrage culture. But if I'm totally honest, we're starting to see people on the right pick it up, and particularly in this blackface issue, saying people need to step down and things like that. I'm not here to talk about the specific situation or what the punishment should be or anything like that. What I am going to do is give a nuanced explanation of how there could be different types of what we just lumped together as blackface and why we should look at each individual situation on its own as opposed to just having these holistic approaches where we say, boom, blackface, and that person's career. So, let's start here. This first picture we have is from Virginia Governor Ralph Northam's yearbook. And we're looking at the right there where you can see someone in blackface and someone in the Klan hood. I'm not going to take a stance on whether this was Northam or not. He says it's not now. Originally said it was. That's not the issue. This is an example of actual blackface is how I think of it. Now, this comes from like minstrel shows where the idea was white people would paint up like this to denigrate and mock black people, make them look buffoonish. That's racist. It's terrible. Now, what is the context of this photo? It could be a joke. We don't know. He could be mocking the idea of blackface, or he could just think that not be mocking the idea of blackface as much, just thought it was offensive and it would be funny. I could totally understand why someone who is black would get offended by this because it does harken back to this idea of a time where, particularly in films or on stage and things like that, black people were treated as garbage, and it was a very racist thing to do. So I could understand being upset about that. Now, is it a question of should this guy's career be ended for a possible bad joke or something like this? I don't think so, but that's not really the point of this video. Now, let's go on to the next picture. This is Ted Danson. He's a liberal. You might know him from the show Becker. He was on Cheers. I actually like a lot of the roles he has. It's on Curb Your Enthusiasm, but he's definitely someone that would be considered Democrats in the Democratic Party. Here he is wearing, again, this is what I would consider actual blackface. Notice how, like, there's an exaggerated lip, like the white around the lips and things like that. That's indicative of what these minstrel shows were. It was to, again, mock black people. Now, I do know a little more about the context of this photo. I don't know if he was dating or just really good friends with Whoopi Goldberg, and they're doing a roast. Whoopi, for those of you who don't know, she's on The View, famous actress. She happens to be black. Apparently, Ted said that Whoopi actually convinced him to do this because she thought it would be hilarious, and he regretted doing it later. But this was clearly him being friends with a black person, and the idea is to mock the concept of blackface. So he's taking a famous black actress, and he's wearing blackface as kind of a jab at, like, yeah, this is how people used to portray black people. And it's literally designed to mock the concept of blackface. Now, you might say this is still offensive. It still is legitimate blackface, and you could be right. That's totally true. But clearly, I don't think this shows that Ted Danson's a racist. There's not other things in his life that point to him being a racist. He's literally mocking the idea of racist. This would be like, in a sense, Dave Chappelle in his skit when he's wearing the Klan hood. He's not saying, "Oh, I'm part of the Klan." He's mocking the idea of the Klan, and that's what's going on here. So this is why we have to be careful. When you look back at the Northam case, we don't know exactly what the context was. Now, I doubt that he was mocking the concept of blackface like Danson is here, or that he had like black friends that encouraged him to do that. I don't know. I mean, that could have happened. We don't know. But the point is, we don't understand. It doesn't prove that you're racist just because you're wearing this. Again, very offensive, and it might be your personal judgment that that's reason to end someone's political career, but I just don't see it that way. But those are the first two stages of what I would call blackface. Now, let's move on to the next photo. This is Jimmy Kimmel. He's a liberal. He's been called by some Democrats the conscience of America. He's been celebrated because he's someone who goes after Trump a lot. He was someone that was, went on stage with his kid crying about the need for Obamacare and things like that. Here he is painted black. He's making fun of the basketball player Karl Malone. Now, I've seen these skits. He is definitely denigrating Karl Malone, and it's not really in like the Ted Danson Whoopi situation where Whoopi was going along with it. I see no evidence that Karl Malone was like there giving Jimmy Kimmel the thumbs up for this. He's basically making a skit where Karl Malone's really stupid, and he's painting himself black. Now, first off, this is not traditional blackface. This is something complete. Notice he's not dressed up like, he doesn't have the white lips or the white eyes or anything like that. So this isn't like minstrel show blackface. This is, however, him painting himself black to mock a black man. So in one sense, it's not as bad as the Ten Danza situation where it's not like actual blackface, what we consider actual blackface. But on the other hand, he is denigrating a black man. So it becomes a more nuanced situation. Now, I don't think that the mere act of painting yourself black is blackface. You could still say it's offensive. And if you want to call this blackface, that's fine. But you have to see there's a difference between this and the actual minstrel show blackface. And I'll show you why here in the next photo. This is Joy Behar from The View. Obviously, someone who hates Trump is a big liberal. Now, you can't see because of the lighting, but she actually has darkened her skin to be black. She gave an explanation in 2016 when they were talking about this, that she did this because she wanted to celebrate, like, basically, she enjoyed black people, was celebrating the idea of being black. You could also see this with what Northam's accused of now, and the third person down the line in the Virginia government. I forget his name, but he was, for example, accused of painting himself black to dress as Curtis Blow, who's a rapper that I happen to really like. Northam claims he painted himself black at one point to be Michael Jackson. And there's all sorts of ideas, like Megyn Kelly got in trouble for the idea of saying, if you're a little girl for Halloween and you want to paint yourself black because Diana Ross is your favorite singer, there's not a problem with that. I happen to agree with that. I don't think that if you're celebrating black people and you happen to like someone who's black and you're Halloween or it's a costume party and you dress up as someone black, I don't think that that's a big deal at all. Now, as a black person, you could still be like, hey, I think this is kind of offensive. Fair enough, but clearly this is a far cry from the actual minstrel show blackface that we started off with its first photo. And with the Jimmy Kimmel photo, we saw someone painting up to literally just to look like someone who was black, but it was to denigrate that particular black person. Here we see painting yourself up to look like someone who's black, but not to denigrate, to celebrate those people. So I don't think that this is even in the same scale. I think that we should, even if you think it's in bad taste or something, you could say that, that's fine. But clearly this isn't the minstrel show blackface, and I don't think it should be considered blackface. I think you could say, hey, you should think about this a little more. I happen to disagree. I think there's not a problem with it. And then, of course, you have the reverse of, well, would it be all right if a black person painted themselves white? Like you've seen that movie, White Chicks. Snoop Dogg, I've seen, painted himself white. Eddie Murphy used to do it in SNL in a hilarious skit. Well, one, I get the idea that it should be the standard should be the same on both sides. But if we're really honest, we could see that there's a history in this country of people painting themselves black to mock black people. And so I can understand why that's a little more offensive. I really can. But you're right that if we're going to hold a standard, it should be for every group. We shouldn't say it's okay for one group to do this because of past injustices, but not for another group to do it. And so that's one of the ideas we see in cultural Marxism, which is how I think we get to this problem in the first place. The left, particularly, playing identity to politics. And we're starting to see it pick up more on the right now, too. Which is, when you're judging people holistically based on groups, and you're not looking at individuals, then you lead to all sorts of situations. So one group's always oppressor and one group's always the oppressed. Well, here, it's the same idea, where when we look at it as a group, we're like, oh, painting yourself black's always bad, that's racist, and, etc. So it shouldn't matter to me whether someone's a Republican or Democrat or anything like that. What matters to me is, like, what was the intent behind it? And I think clearly here we see with Joy Behar, who I have no love lost for. I don't think this is that offensive. I don't think that she should be punished for that. Maybe she could explain herself briefly, but it's not as big of a deal as the actual minstrel paint blackface. Now, let's move on to some more categories. This is from Covington High School. This story was used to smear the Covington kids after it turned out that the video that was put out was deceptive. And so they went back 5 years in time and found this photo from their high school and tried to say this is somehow indicative of these kids. Now, if you could see on the very right here, you see a kid painted in black with kind of like a smile on his face. And then on the very left, you could see another kid. Now, they're in full body paint black. And this isn't just like brown like you saw with this situation, Jimmy Kimmel. This is actual totally black. And you have this idea of the paint. Now, I don't think that, if you can see right here, I don't think that this is the same as minstrel paint. It kind of looks almost like Joker paint or The Crow, where it's supposed to be intimidating. Like you see kabuki masks like this. What this is it's called a blackout game. And you have other games in sports where you would have like a whiteout game, a blue out game, depending on team colors or your alternate colors. And everyone wears the clothes. So like I live in the Pittsburgh area. I've been to Pittsburgh Penguin games that were whiteout games. So everyone's supposed to wear white t-shirt, like all white. And I've even seen people, even white people, paint themselves like white for those games, you know. So you look, you know, kind of like the movie Halloween, like your face is totally white like that. And these blackout games are just the reverse of that, where everyone's wearing black clothes, and some, particularly in high school and college, you have, you know, enthusiastic students that want to paint their body a color. I went to a school called Red Bank High School. I had painted my face red and white, kind of like a crappy job of the Ultimate Warrior paint when I used to go to basketball games for our high school. So I understand the enthusiasm. I do not think this is meant to denigrate black people at all. Now, you might say, whoa, you got to be a little more culturally sensitive. And Covington School has, in fact, said no more allowed. You're not allowed to do this like 3-4 years ago. But I don't see the problem. This is no different to me than Oakland Raiders fans, that I guess Los Angeles Raiders they're going to be, that paint their face black. Now, usually there's a little silver in it. But this is not designed to mock black people. It looks bad here because there's a black player from the other team about to toss the ball in. But that's just coincidence. They're just heckling the other team. And there's other videos, or there's other examples of when they had whiteout games where they're heckling black people just because they're on the other team, or they're heckling white people as well. So I don't think this is an example of racism, and I think that this was pushed. This is one of the things we see with this, how this situation was pushed to act like it was the same as something like this. And it's clearly not. We need to have a nuanced discussion of this. So the people that were just like, oh, that's black, that's racist. Of course, we see the irony and the double standards when then they don't want to say like what Ted Danson or Joy Behar or Jimmy Kimmel did was racist. But clearly, even beyond that, this is less offensive than even painting yourself up specifically to look like a black person. This is just painting yourself cartoonishly black. Not to make fun of black people, but because it was a blackout game. That was your school colors. So I think this is even further on the line of, I don't understand the reason to be offended and we shouldn't judge people. Now, if you're a black person, that's one of the arguments that would be said. If you're not black, you can't understand this. I guess that very well may be true, but I'm just saying, even if you're black, you have to see how that minstrel type idea, and then going down the line, this is far less offensive to that, and I don't think that this should be judged harshly at all. It, to me, seemed like it was being used for an agenda. Now, the next photo. This is Mary Poppins. They put soot in their face for a scene on the movie. I don't remember this particular scene, but it was like, it wasn't to denigrate black people. It was to show that they worked or had been in a chimney or something like that. This is now being called racist and blackface. That is absurd. That is not what it is. It is clear that they weren't denigrating black people with this. They were trying to make themselves look dirty. They didn't completely color their face in black. They just put some soot in their face. It's absolutely absurd. It would be no different than my grandpa, who used to work in a coal mine, who happened to be a white person. If he got out of the coal mine and is covered in soot like this, does that mean that he's engaged in blackface? Clearly not. And clearly that's what they're trying to resemble here, someone who had been working with coal or had been in a chimney or something like that. So I don't understand how this is at all lumped in with what we were talking about. Now, keep in mind, though, the entire range I've showed you of these photos, we are now just saying, we have people saying, nope, it's all blackface, it's all bad. And if you don't believe me, you could look it up. There are plenty of people that's writing articles. Is Mary Poppins racist? Look at this scene. Clearly not, and it just shows the absurdity. Once you start to say something like this is racist, then you take away from the impact of the actual possible racist stuff like I showed you in the first photo. Now, again, I don't think any of these photos on their own are a reason to end someone's political career. But even if you thought that first one with Northam is enough, how can you then say that this is somehow the same type of thing, or that this is somehow racist as well? It just seems crazy. It makes no sense. And I think anyone who's looking at this objectively can see this was not intended to be racist. And we need to tell people that are trying to lump this in as racist, like, no. It's kind of the boy that cried wolf thing. You shouldn't lump this together. You're then actually belittling actual racism. Now, the last example I came up with. Look at this person, particularly on the left. Now, I'm colorblind, so this could have a little green in it. But this is basically, that could be considered blackface. These are people and situations where you have to paint your face black for your job. And so you could have, like, a soldier, or you could have someone like, I know I've heard of stagehands. that like you don't want the audience to see the stagehands in the back, so you wear all black and like wear black gloves and paint your face black so that no one can see you when you're pulling pulleys or something. Maybe you're doing like Peter Pan and you want to have the, appearance that someone's flying. So you want to be as dark as possible back in the stage that's not lit so people can't see you pulling the pulleys and things like that. That's not racist at all. It's just part of your job. Your face is being painted a certain color because it's beneficial to the action that you're taking. This isn't insulting black people, but you can see how if this picture, like particularly, you can see how there's other people with camo in this photo, but let's assume that you just saw the one gentleman here, right here on the left. If you just saw that him cropped on his own, you might say, oh, is he mocking black people? Well, no, clearly not. This is demonstrating camouflage that you could use for hunting or maybe a soldier. So this shouldn't be lumped in as blackface at all. This shows that there are legitimate reasons for painting yourself black that has nothing to do with denigrating black people. Just like you might paint yourself certain colors for other jobs. Now, black would be more common to paint yourself because that's usually indicative of you're trying to hide your face for some reason. But you could see a situation where you would have to paint your face a different color. Like there's different types of camo. Like perhaps if you're doing winter camo, maybe you'd want to paint your face white or something like that. If you're a soldier or a hunter, it's not denigrating white people any more than you're in a darker environment. You're painting yourself black. It's denigrating black people. So what I was trying to show is just kind of, we get basically from this photo to this photo and all of these in between, and each one's a nuanced situation. My recommendation is I don't think that any of these are enough to end someone's political career on their own. If we see people particularly that are in paintings like this that literally are blackface, that's like minstrel makeup, and there's other examples of them being racist throughout their life, then fine, that might speak to being indicative of them being a racist. But if not, and again, I have no love for this Ralph Northam character, everyone seems to say, I've not seen examples of him really being racist when we worked with him in legislator or as a doctor, and this is from, 84, so decades ago, 3 decades ago. So I think we need to ask ourselves, the point I'm trying to make is we could see the nuance in what everyone's calling blackface now. And I clearly think that we should look at each situation individually. So not only should we look at each situation individually like that compared to this, but we should also look at each situation individually as, well, what was the context behind this photo? And if we don't have the context, we should allow the person to explain and see what their apology is, if they give some sort of apology. Now, Northam's apology was crap, and there are people that are saying, look, he shouldn't have to resign over this photo, but he should have to apologize, or he should have to resign over his apology. I'm not in that camp either. But the point is, we should look at each of these individuals' situations as nuance. And we shouldn't have this outrage culture because we see what it leads to. As soon as you start playing this game of, let's go back to yearbooks and look at these photos, now you can start to take stuff out of context. We even saw how it was used to smear those Covington kids. It was used to smear those kids at a time where the media knew they were getting death threats, they were getting doxxed, and they knew that they had misreported the story, and the full context of the story showed that these kids weren't the evil, horrible racists that was initially reported on. Yet instead of saying, our bad, we apologize for rushing to judgment, a lot of news organizations sent people out to find dirt on the school, and find this dirt from 5 years ago of someone painted completely black for a Blackhawk game, and they try to say, that's racist, see? That's blackface. And so, then we clearly see their double standard then, when they're not calling out Ted Danson, they're not calling out Jimmy Kimmel, they're not calling out Joy Behar, and those situations are all actual people trying to look like a black individual, which is closer to blackface and which would be worse on that scale. So that's the problem we see with these double standards and the rush to judgment. We should look, regardless of political party, that should not influence our decision or political ideology. We should look at the context of each photo of something like this, and we should look at the character of the people around them. I don't mean characters in, they're Democrat or they're Republican, so I hate them. I mean, are there other racist situations that are occurring with this person on a regular basis that shows this might have been meant to mock actual minorities? I don't think in any of these cases we really see that. Even with Jimmy Kimmel, who's mocking Karl Malone, who's a black basketball player, I don't like Jimmy Kimmel at all. I don't see evidence that he's racist. So again, we need to stop, and this is true of all of these outrage movements. It's true of the Me Too movement as well. We need to stop lumping everything together, because then you actually belittle the actual really egregious offenses by likening them to, just simple mistakes or jokes gone bad. So I hope this video was helpful. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe, hit the alert button, and recommend me to some other people. I'll be doing a live stream tomorrow. It might be a little later than normal because I have a work scheduled event that I have to attend. So, but yeah, look forward to that. Probably around 1 or 2. So, all right, everyone, have a good one.